Good morning and welcome to Coffee Break with Riverside County Child Support Services. I'm Nathan Hartel.
And I'm Bruce Wagner.
Welcome to episode number 3 of our podcast, Bruce.
Thank you, and good morning.
Good morning. So this is where we take a coffee break and spend a little bit of time with our customers to talk about all things related to child support in the hopes of educating and informing our customers about what we do. And today we've got a really special episode called The Legal Corner.
Wow, sounds exciting.
It is exciting. It's exciting because we get to ask you, our chief attorney, a whole bunch of questions about the legal part of child support.
Sounds good.
It does. So the legal part of child support, what we want to do throughout this whole thing is really make sure that our customers see how this applies to them. And we're going to start by interviewing you, if you will, and asking you some questions about some different topics related to the court process. What legal authority do we have as a child support agency to do what we do? Are we just coming up with child support amounts that we would charge someone, or is there an actual legal process behind that? So it's just a little bit of a taste of what we're going to be covering. All right, so Bruce, I think in order to answer some of the questions about our legal authority as an agency, we probably need to take a step back and ask, where did the Department of Child Support Services come from? Are we part of the district attorney? How is all that connected so our customers understand our role, where our authority comes from, and what that means?
Nathan, that's a really good question because the Department of Child Support Services didn't just come out of nowhere. It was created by the Social Security Act many decades ago and required states to implement a program to provide child support related services to the people of each state. In California, that statute, that Social Security Act, was changed into state law, and that's where we operate under right now.
Okay. So we have a mandate as a child support agency to provide the services that we do, but we're not the district attorney, and if I'm understanding you correct, we're separate from the court. Is that right?
That's exactly right. Back in the year 2000, the Department of Child Support Services separated away from the district attorney's office. And since then, we've been our own agency. We've been our own division. And we operate as a local agency under a larger state agency, which oversees all of our activities here. Throughout the state, there are, I believe, around 52 different local child support agencies that pretty much do what we do. We all are under the same requirements to follow the law, and the Department of Child Support Services at the state level make sure that we do follow the law.
So it's important to understand that, because if you're going to court and you see different people, you see the judge, you see attorneys, you wonder who they're working for, and you see a child support attorney. It's important to know you're not dealing with the district attorney. It's important to know that when you're speaking with a child support representative or even a child support attorney, you're not talking to a representative of the court. So you can understand and get a distinction as a customer about who you're addressing and who you're talking to. And I think that's important for our customers to understand.
Yes, it is. And we are not a part of the court. We're actually part of the executive branch, whereas the court, if you remember your high school civics lesson, is part of the judicial branch. So we're in completely separate branches, and we cannot influence the court, nor can the court influence us.
I think it's important to know, too, that when we talk about things and say things like executive branch, we talk about legal authority, we're not using these terms or these references to suggest that as an agency we have power over our customers. We're talking about this because we want our customers to know that we are not arbitrarily choosing, for example, what someone should pay in child support. We are mandated by the state to perform the duties that we do. The court is part of this process, and we're not just choosing to do it. We have the authority given to us by the state to participate in this process with our customers. So one question I have about that is, are there laws that actually determine how much child support somebody should pay?
The answer to that question is yes. There are laws that help the court, help us determine what the proper amount of child support should be based on the circumstances of the individual families. The court does have some discretion over making orders for child support, depending on what happens in court. But the parents themselves really do have the most discretion in most cases. As long as there's no public assistance involved, the parents can pretty much determine how much the child support should be and do not need to seek the court's permission to set their own child support amount.
Okay, so that's interesting. And we're going to get into that in a little bit more detail in just a second. What I think of when you talked about the discretion of the court, though, is if I'm a customer, I want to be present in court.
Absolutely.
I want to be there and I want to be participating, because if there is discretion, meaning if that judge can hear my story, my side of it, take into account all the facts, and make a decision based on all that, I want to be there to share what's going on in my life, to share the information about my income, what's going on with my kids. I want to be a full participant in that process.
Never not go to court if you have a court hearing. You want to be part of the process. You want to put your side of the story before the court. Tell the court what's going on, because the court uses those facts to help set a proper child support amount.
All right, that's great to know, and I think that in this episode, if nothing else, that is going to be a really important piece of information for our customers to walk away with, participate in the process.
Yeah, good takeaway.
Yeah, so let's think about that. Our customers are participating in the process. As a customer, what can I expect? I'm showing up in court, I'm participating in the process. There's a lot of things that come to my mind. Can I expect a child support attorney, for example, to represent me?
Well,
What goes on?
let me answer that question real quickly. The Department of Child Support attorneys do not represent the customers that it serves. The Department of Child Support Services attorneys actually represent the public interest in establishing and modifying child support.
All right, so that's interesting. I think a lot of people think that when they show up in court, the child support attorney is there to represent them. And in fact, some people may misunderstand it to be that we're there to represent the mother on the case, for example, and maybe not the father, or vice versa. And it's really not about those roles or those parties. As you said, they're there to represent the department.
Yes, and that's an extremely important point. And in fact, it's just the opposite. The Department of Child Support attorneys are precluded by law from representing the parties of a case.
So does that mean I need to get a lawyer to show up in court and participate with the child support process?
I think that's probably one of the most often asked questions I get as an attorney. Do I need my own attorney? And that's a difficult question to ask, because not every case is the same. Some cases are very complicated, and the assistance of an attorney can be critical. In other cases, with family law, oftentimes it's you can do it yourself. The family law courts are very user-friendly. But if you're wondering, okay, I do need some legal help, I do need some legal advice, the Department of Child Support Services cannot give me that legal advice. Where can I get some free legal advice? I think you know the answer to that question.
I do, and our customers can contact the Family Law Assistance Center. And so at the end of the episode, you'll be able to check the podcast episode notes and get information on how to contact them. But it's really important to know. So I have a child support case manager. If I have a legal question, I'm not asking them then. Is that what you're saying?
No,
Okay.
They cannot answer your legal questions.
Okay. So that's good to know. So what else can I expect then? Can I expect my information to be kept confidential? When I think about going to court, I think about sharing a lot of personal information, things that I may not want to be known by everybody. What does that look like? How much do I have to say? Who do I have to say it in front of? And is it kept confidential?
Well, let's talk about the court experience, and part of the court experience is that concept of confidentiality. Confidentiality is a little bit different in court than it is for the Department of Child Support Services main office, and I'll get into that a little bit later, but let's talk about the court experience. So you have a court date coming up. You've never been to court before. You got all this paperwork. You've filled out all the documents and sent it in, and you're ready to go to court. You get there early, the morning of your court date. What happens? Well, if the Department of Child Support Services is enforcing your case, then what you will do first is you will meet with one of our child support professionals, either an attorney or a caseworker who will go over the case with you and the other parent, if you both show up, and try to bring you to a consensus over whatever is at issue on that court date. Now, if you can't reach an agreement with the other parent, or even with the Department of Child Support Services staff, you always have the right to request a hearing before a judicial officer, before one of the commissioners who we appear in front of. All you have to do is say, I would like to see the commissioner, and at that point in time, your child support professional will set up a hearing for you same day, maybe even within a matter of minutes they can set that up. But it will be a same day hearing. Then what you would do is you would all meet in front of the judge or the commissioner in this case at the time of the hearing. Everybody would tell their story, explain what their positions are, and the commissioner would make a ruling on that. Very simple process. You don't need to know the law to do that. You just have to be a little bit prepared with your documents, your financial information, so that the commissioner can make an intelligent decision over the question that's before the court.
Okay. That sounds like a long process. So can I expect to be in court all day? Am I going to different places? What does that feel like to me? Do I need to take the entire day off of work if I'm going to court for child support?
Conceivably, yes. You could
Okay.
be in that court process all day long. Initially, you meet with the Department of Child Support Services staff either at a meet and confer office in Riverside, it's on 12th Street. In Hemet, it's I believe right off State Street, it's right next to the courthouse. In Indio, you actually meet inside the courtroom, but you meet with the staff, and the staff will try to bring the case to a resolution without the parties having to go before the court. Now, if it does have to go before the court, then we're at the mercy of the court schedule.
Okay.
That's where the wait could be all morning long and maybe even well into the afternoon.
And can I bring my kids with me? Is there childcare? Is there a dress code? What else do I need to know if I'm going to plan to be there all day long?
The court does have a child care facility, but make sure that you call ahead of time and find out what their requirements are. They can't watch children that are too young, so it's best to make all the arrangements ahead of time.
Okay.
Is there a dress code? Yeah, you don't want to show up in shorts and flip-flops. You really want to give the court its due respect.
Okay. What happens to me if I do show up in shorts and flip-flops?
Well,
am I going to be sent home?
Depending on the commissioner, some commissioners may not allow you
Okay.
in the courtroom if you're wearing shorts and flip-flops.
Okay. So it's a place to take seriously. It's a place to respect the court and to follow all those rules, including how we dress and how we approach them and how we talk. That's all important.
Yes, it's the best advice I could give is to always be respectful when you have a court date.
Okay.
Be respectful to the other parent, be respectful to the child support staff, and be respectful to the commissioner.
So you mentioned the other parent. What if I am ready and willing to come to an agreement with the other parent? I don't want to, I've had that time you talked about of meeting with either a child support attorney or a child support caseworker. I don't need to go and talk to the commissioner. What do I do if both parents are in agreement? What happens then?
If you can reach that agreement before the court date, then what we want to do is we want to bring both parents in and have them sign what we call a stipulation. A stipulation is the term of art that we use for agreement in the legal world. So we want to bring both parents in before the court date. Save them the trouble of setting aside an entire day, driving to the courthouse, parking, waiting. We want to avoid that.
Okay.
So if both parents can reach an agreement beforehand, we are ready, willing, and able to facilitate that.
Okay, sounds good. One question that comes up quite often is, well, I work on that day. but I might be able to make arrangements. I can't be at court in person, but I might be able to call in. Can I call in and show up to court over the phone?
Well, you can, but you have to get the court's permission ahead of time.
So that's not the child support caseworker that I call and say, hey, can I just call into the court hearing?
No,
Okay.
the Department of Child Support Services has no authority in that area.
Okay.
That's strictly up to the court, and you have to actually apply to appear by telephone. And the court will review your application and tell you ahead of time whether or not you are allowed to appear by telephone.
Okay. And while we might have touched on these things a little bit in our first and second episode, can you remind our audience just briefly, what are the reasons that they might find themselves in court connected to the child support process? One of them would be to get a brand new court order for child support. They don't have one yet, but some people already have a court order for child support and things change. What is that reason that leads them to court to address that?
If there's a need to change the child support order, and you've already asked the Department of Child Support Services to review your case, they've reviewed your case, they've sent you the results, and you just don't agree with it, that's why you would probably end up in court.
Okay. So I have a question for you, Bruce. I'm going to try and stump you.
Okay.
I live in Florida, but my child support case has a court hearing in California. What do I do then if one of the parties lives out of state?
The Department of Child Support Services will do everything in its power to help facilitate any court hearings you may have when you're out of state. A lot of times that just means calling you up on the morning of the hearing and talking to you over the phone. But remember again, you want to put in that application to appear by telephone to the court just in case your matter does have to go before a commissioner. And you bring up a good point, because I think a lot of parents may not realize that the Department of Child Support Services in this state, in California, works with departments of child support services in every single other state of this country. And in fact, we work with all kinds of countries all over the world. We have reciprocal agreements with many of the countries around the world under the Hague Convention. In the United States, we call it the UIFSA laws, and we all follow the same laws. So just because you are in one state and the other parent is in a different state doesn't mean you can't work out your child support issues.
Okay, that's good to know. And so I don't have to remember things like Hague or UIFSA laws. I just have to remember, again, talk to the Department of Child Support Services.
Just call the
Talk to my
Department of Child
caseworker.
Support Services.
All right, Bruce, so let's bring it back to a topic we talked about just a minute ago. I asked the question, is my information going to be kept confidential in court? I'm nervous about sharing a whole bunch of personal information. You started talking about it, you promised to get back to it, so let's circle back to that and make sure we tell our customers what to expect there.
Before I get to confidentiality in court, let me talk a little bit about the confidentiality requirements for the Department of Child Support Services. Pretty much every document that a parent sends to us is a confidential document. Now there are a few exceptions to that, but you can pretty much be confident that your information will not be released outside of our agency when you send it in. Now there are certain documents that we do have to release to either the other parent and a few other agencies. Those are all in the Family Law Code, and I won't get into the details right now, but I think to address your point, yes, you can count on the Department of Child Support Services to be very confidential with your information. Now in court, it's a little bit different, because in court you are required to send the court certain documents if you have a matter on calendar. Once you send the court those documents, the other party is usually entitled to see them. One example of that would be the income and expense declaration that we use and the court uses to determine correct amounts of child support. That document, that specific document, is available to both parents. So if there's some information that you do not want released, it would be a good idea to keep it off that document unless it's required. And the information I'm talking about might be an address or a phone number or a social security number.
And again, I would imagine if a customer had a concern about that, the best place to start, again, would be to contact the department, talk to their caseworker, express that concern, and just have a conversation about what they need to do.
Absolutely. Talk to the Department of Child Support Services, or you can talk to, as you mentioned earlier, the Family Law Facilitator if you need more depth of information. But yeah, there are always sources of information that can help you make sure that the information that you put out there doesn't get into the wrong hands.
Okay, that's great. So the Legal Corner, I think, has provided our customers with a pretty good understanding of what to expect in court, what that process looks like. I know we've talked and emphasized a lot about the importance of participating in the process. But to close it out, let me ask you, Bruce, other than that, is there a takeaway? Is there one item that you would like to leave with our customers to remember as being significantly important?
I think the most important part of what we both talked about today is just be involved in the process. The more involved you are with the process, the more likely you are to get the result that you're looking for.
Great, sounds good. Thank you very much. It's been
Thank
informative.
you. Yes, thank you.
My coffee cup is empty, Bruce,
And so was mine, Nathan.
and our coffee break is over. It's been a pleasure talking with you, and we'll see you next time. Please remember to subscribe to our podcast. Visit our website, riversidechildsupport.com. If you have any questions, you can contact us by phone at 866-901-3212. Our website includes our office hours. We are open the second Saturday of every month, and limited availability at additional locations found on our event calendar on our website. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter for the latest happenings at Riverside Child Support Services, and don't forget to check the podcast notes for specific topics discussed throughout today's podcast.
And remember, we are here to help.
Yes, we are. Thank you, Bruce.